Hi, welcome to the Leaderonomics show. I'm here today with Colin Charles in the entrepreneurial segment. He's a technologist. Colin is also currently a council member of the Malaysian National Computer Federation, Confederation, as well as the Technopreneurs Association of Malaysia. Colin, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, tell us a bit about this whole technology space and things that you're involved in right now.
Right, so generally in Malaysia, my involvement is largely with team and MNCC. We focus on everything entrepreneurial related, especially a team. And my portfolio is usually open, anything open, be it open content, open creativeness, open source, open data. I'm a big proponent of open source.
Yeah.
Because I've made my bread and butter through open source throughout the years. So
Right.
I'm a big proponent on being open.
Yeah.
So spend a lot of time mentoring people. We also at team occasionally look at project management
Yeah.
with regards to companies that have been given some kind of funding and so on.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I also advise a few startups
All right.
as well as through one of the investment companies that we have in Finland.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you mentioned about mentoring and all that, and how important you think mentoring is to startups.
I think mentoring will help you sort of give you a certain direction, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the mentoring is right sometimes. Sometimes you need to be able to see ideas that are new. Give you a good example. Have you heard of a site called Airbnb?
Yeah, okay.
So that recently in the last couple of weeks there have been lots of posts going back about how Airbnb was a good startup, that they were trying to get an early stage investor to come in and put in some money, and he wasn't sure of the idea, but now he regrets actually not investing in the idea because it's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
And it turns out that I guess this is sometimes things that mentors need to also see.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you may not see the idea yet, or you may not be certain of an idea, and of course you should go with your gut feeling. But and that's when you choose which companies to advise naturally. But I think mentoring is important because we've been there, we've done that.
Yeah.
We sort of know how to do certain things, and we know that certain things maybe were too early for their time.
Yeah.
Like we're early adopters, we tend to be. So maybe we took on, say, getting a PDA, a Palm Pilot, and we saw where PDAs were going. They were going to merge with phones, for example. But if you were in the content business for creating PDA content back in the mid-90s, you're probably too early.
Yeah, you may not see it at
yeah,
all,
you were probably too early then. Now is the time to be creating the content, and obviously you should look towards the future.
Yeah, and so when you talk about mentoring, in your experience when you're mentoring or talking to a business person, an entrepreneur, what are some challenges that you face while trying to help someone?
Well, sometimes you're fixated on an idea and you think it's a good idea. And if you're an entrepreneur, yes, you should believe in yourself. But sometimes you need to also look at the market fit of your product. This is why I believe totally in metrics and measurement. That if you think your idea is the way to go, you spend the next 3 months measuring it very, very closely. And you see your users doing it some other way, they're using it in another method. You should either change to adapt to your users, or do you continue? And a lot of entrepreneurs think that their initial idea is correct, so let's continue with that. And that's usually what leads to failure, because they don't usually focus on the metrics and measurement. They think, look, we just launched something, it's gonna show up and people are gonna use it. But that's not necessarily true. If people are using it in a different way, you should adapt. Like I can give you an example from the early days at MySQL. Our aims were always to make a very fast database that was very performant and easy to use.
That's right.
But then we slowly started seeing people starting to use them in the enterprise. So we had to either adopt or just continue with our web focus. So we moved away from the web focus and just also focus on the enterprise stuff to make the enterprise users quite happy. And that's actually initially what led to people wanting to buy MySQL to begin with.
So there needs to be that flexibility in terms of how you think through things and all that.
Yeah, I like business plans and all, but I think you should be very nimble to realize that you need to change your business plan every 90 days, every 6 months or so on. Not change your goal entirely. Your goal may be to make certain class of user happy, but your goal should not be to make money. The goal should be to be passionate about doing something and do it well. But at the same time, you should be able to be nimble enough to change. And this is what you can do as a startup. You can't do this as a very large company. IBM and all that face real huge issues being nimble. But if you're small, you don't have much to do, you didn't take in people's money and so on, you just maybe took in angel investment money for very little. So I think that's exactly the time you should be nimble.
That's right. Now, with Echelon around the corner, where you're one of the judges to actually sit down on a panel to just look at some of these entrepreneur ideas, what are things that you look for when someone pitches an idea to you?
Right. So Echelon is coming up. Everybody can go register, I believe, at echelon2011.com. There's a satellite event here in Malaysia on the 21st. Now, the ideas that I'm really looking for are ideas that have market fit, ideas that are beyond just Malaysia. As in, you may use Malaysia as a testing ground, but you really plan to have growth beyond Malaysia.
And why is that important for you?
Well, we want numbers. Users are a numbers game. You've got to either figure out now, do you have a plan to monetize every individual user, or are you going to figure out how to get mass amount of users and then monetize on them later? But nonetheless, you still need a large user base.
Right, so
and the user base that I believe
critical,
in Malaysia is quite small. Be global, think global. And of course, I'm not looking at copycats. We don't have a large enough economy for copycats to succeed, I think. We're not China or Vietnam, where the internet's censored, or copycats can succeed in China because China is so large. The population is just huge.
True.
If you're in Singapore or Malaysia, copycats are unlikely to succeed because
we don't have the volume of people. Even like Indonesia is huge.
Indonesia also is huge, and if you're in the mobile space in Indonesia, you're probably doing a pretty good job because it turns out nearly everyone there has a mobile phone.
Precisely.
Malaysia, yes, you can do the same thing, but keep in mind we have a population of about 26 million, and the ones that are really going to be connected to use your stuff, very small amount, much smaller. We have 13 million users on the internet, and even now with those 13 million users, I think we only have about 8 million Facebook users, for example, and we know Facebook is so ubiquitous. It's unless you have a great plan on getting to ubiquity, I suggest thinking bigger than Malaysia.
And what else do you look for in young entrepreneurs?
Drive, passion, hunger. You've got to have a goal, and you have to want to reach the goal. I think a lot of people have goals, and then they talk to someone, and then they get demotivated, and then they change goals. You shouldn't change your goals. You believe in yourself.
And how do you actually spot that? I talk about drive, passion. How do you actually see that? I mean, that's pretty soft in a sense. How do you actually gauge a person's drive?
Well, when I meet a person and they tell me about the idea, I see how convicted they are. Even if I throw negatives at them, if they believe in the idea, they're gonna constantly come up above and find arguments against everything, which also means they've probably thought the idea out well. Well thought out idea has a better chance of execution. So I think it's all about having a little conversation. You can learn a lot about a person and a team within a 15 to 30 minute conversation.
All right. And would I be right to say that many of these entrepreneurs that you meet are probably pretty young, probably in their 20s or maybe 30s, early 30s?
Most of the entrepreneurs I meet, be it here in Malaysia, Singapore, Europe, or even America, tend to be pretty young, yes. The youngest I met recently was a 19-year-old entrepreneur who closed the seed round, and he's recently just received investment for his company. So they tend to be pretty young, below 30s. So you don't have, you're not married, you don't have a house to pay off. The most you may have is a car. So you're more nimble to do things.
Right. So and they're what we call the Gen Y, so Generation Y people, and there's this whole generation. Do you find it challenging to work with this group of people at this age group?
Well, from a hiring perspective, yes, I occasionally do see that it's harder to get Gen Ys to work with you because they want to focus on doing their own things. But from an entrepreneurial perspective, I think the Gen Y are really ideal because they have drive, they have vision, they are so used to doing things differently.
Correct, and they're willing to take the risk.
I mean, that's the beauty of being young also, you're willing to take the risk, you're willing to make a mistake. The important thing is after you made a mistake, you learn from the mistake and you move on. You don't get stuck and dwell on the mistake. And you obviously learn.
We're talking about this whole risk thing. How important is it for a young entrepreneur to really have an appetite for risk?
Well, you're young. You should take as much risk as you can. I mean, I'm not saying go and take financial risk, but if you have the time, you're sitting in university, you have the choice of going out every night to hang out with your friends in the mamak, or you have a choice of building some kind of software in your own bedroom. And chances are within 3 months you will be able to launch either your web startup or a mobile app. I mean, mobile apps are becoming really popular nowadays. So it's all about choice, and why not take the risk? Why not take the risk of not hanging out in the Marmark
Yeah.
for every night and take the risk of developing something, doing something in your own time and actually be pretty successful for you?
So on one side, there's this whole risk thing and this whole drive thing. On one side, even in leadership, as we talk to many more senior leaders per se, and they always say that one of the challenges that they have with the Gen Ys is that they want it too easy, they want it too fast, and that could be a downside for a young entrepreneur, which maybe a bit too ambitious or want to be an overnight millionaire, so to speak. What would be your advice?
Wanting it to be fast in a way is good because you can fail fast, learn fast.
Okay.
And in the open source world, we always believe in release early, release often.
Uh-huh.
So in a way, the urgency of wanting things to be fast is good. If your urgency is wanting to be an overnight millionaire fast, that is the wrong goal. Your urgency should be, I want to build a great product.
Yeah.
And it may or may not be an overnight success, but I'm going to plod at making it a success.
Yeah.
And you have to have some kind of vision and a plan to make it a success, which may involve you spending time making brochures, being creative, running Facebook ads,
Yeah.
getting your target audience excited about what you're doing. So that would probably address the part where you said, people want things fast. Yes, I think being fast is good. Being a bit lazy and all that, that's drive. And I don't think, I think if you are lazy, chances are you're going to be an employee.
Yeah.
But if you have the drive and you're not going to be lazy, chances are you're going to be an employer at some stage. And you're going to face the same problems of, looking for those employees.
Yeah.
So it's all, I think the drive is what's going to differentiate if you're going to be lazy or not.
Right. Now, what would be your advice to young entrepreneurs who really want to be the Zuckerbergs of the world and Bill Gates? They're really looking into some kind of breakthrough in their business, in their life and all that. What would your advice for them?
Follow your dreams, experiment, measure. Every time you make an experiment, make good measurements, test everything properly, and just follow your dream. If your dream is to build something good, remember, I don't think people like Zuckerberg or Bill Gates had a dream of becoming billionaires. Their dream was to, one was to make software on every computer, and one was to make people connected throughout the world. So they had noble dreams that so happened to make them rich along the way.
Right.
So I think follow your dreams, and that's what's important.
Thank you. So you've been watching the Leaderonomics show. I'm with Colin Charles, a technologist, and we've been such a wonderful time talking about leadership stuff. So thank you for being with us, Colin.
Thank you for having me.
Great privilege.
Cheers.